sometimes there are multiple switches between the two PCs or two kinds of devices that are trying to communicate. For example, here I have switch access 1 and switch access 2 between PC 1 and PC 4. Now, if they want to communicate to each other, first of all, I need to make sure that both switches know about VLAN 100, for example, that these two computers are connected to. And on the other hand, the link between switches should be a trunk so that I can, transmit the packets for VLAN 100 over this link to the other side. So there are multiple things, and one of the things that I'm going to focus on right now is how I can configure both switches with the same VLANs and keep them synchronized all the time. And one of the options is VTP. VTP is a protocol that you need to make sure that is configured correctly on all switches. First of all, you should know that VTP has 3 different versions. Version 1 is a very old version, so I'm not going to talk about that. Version 2 is a dominant version, but version 3 is fairly recent, and in version 3 we have some security features enabled. For example, encrypting the password and encrypting the packets that are transmitted between two switches for knowing what VLANs they are going to configure on themselves. So let's configure VTP. And VTP says that if one of the switches changed, it is going to send some notifications to other switches, such as switch access 2, so that the other side knows what are the changes, and it will enable those changes on itself. It will apply all the changes on itself. And this means that some of the switches are going to be servers. This means that all the changes are going to happen on them, and the other switches should be only client. I mean, you should not be able to apply any changes to them other than, via server. And some of the switches, they do not want to, receive or send any information about the VLANs that are configured on themselves. These type of switches are going to be transparent. And mostly, you see, for security reason, before VTP 3, of course, most network administrators prefer to configure switches like transparent mode. Let's configure switch access 1 as server and switch access 2 again as server and then as client and finally as transparent, so you see all the differences. So let's go to switch access 1 first of all. I'm going to check the initial status of VTP. For this I just type show VTP status, and you can see that it says right now it is in server operation mode. It has version 2 of VTP enabled on that, and unfortunately we cannot enable version 3 on this because this only supports version 1 and 2. Right now the configuration revision number is 0. This means that I haven't changed anything on this yet. And right now it says number of existing VLANs is 6. This means that I have configured 6 VLANs on this, and of course I can show VLANs -s brief here. This shows me all the VLANs configured here. One of them is VLAN 1, that is the default VLAN, 100 that I just configured in previous section, and of course some of the VLANs that are there for special usages such as 1002 to 1005. The other piece of information that is very important is Vtp domain name. Right now you can see it is null. This means that there is no Vtp domain name configured on this server, and if you want to send information to other switches, it should have a Vtp domain set. And you can see some other things such as Vtp version 2 mode. This is disabled. It says there is a digest here, but I already know that there is no password set for this. If I try to show VTP password, I can just type show VTP password, and you can see it says the VTP password is not set. This is one of the flaws that you see on VTP version 1 and 2. If somebody accesses this switch, it can easily just type show VTP password, and you can see the VTP password for that switch, and you can easily change it, or whatever he wants to do or she wants to do, he is or she is enabled to do that. She is able to do that. So what I am going to do, first of all, I'm going to make sure that VTP version 3 is enabled if I have that on my switch. But right now I know that there is no such thing. If I try to type VTP version, you can see that only 1 and 2 are present on this switch. So one of the things that I need to make sure is I have a VTP domain. So if I already have a VTP domain and I'm going to change it to null, I can easily type VTP domain null, and this disable any VTP domain that is already set. But right now you can see it is null, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is to type VTP domain, and I'm going to give it a name. For example, my company name or whatever I have, say cisco.com or whatever you want to set here, and hit enter. Now if you want to see VTP domain name, you just type to show VTP status, and it will tell you that the VTP domain name is right now cisco.com. It says it is in server mode, and server mode means that this switch is going to send all information about the VLANs to other switches. Now other switches are not configured with VTP domain name, so if I go to switch access 2 and try to show VTP domain, it is going to tell me that, oh no, VTP status of course. It is going to tell me that right now I don't have any VTP domain name and it is null, there is nothing here, but as soon as it starts to receive some packets, maybe it will get the domain name from those packets and I start working with that domain name. So first of all, I can start just a debug here because I'm going to see if there is any packet here for VTP, and you can see that it says there is nothing like debug VTP, but let's say debug IP packets, okay? And it says that any packet that is received is going to be analyzed here, so I need to wait for that, and VTP is going to send some information to the other side. So right now I don't see anything. That's because switch access 1 does not have any changes. The revision number is still 0. So if you wait for this, it's not going to happen unless you trigger a change on switch access 1. Let's say I'm going to configure a VLAN and I'm going to delete it again. This way I'm going to change the revision number and it is going to send information to switch 2 that is on the other side of the VLAN. So let's say what are the problems and how can we, resolve all of those problems, solve all of those problems. So first of all, I type VLAN 101 and hit enter, and I'm going to exit. This way the revision number is going to change. So if I try to show VTP status, it says that right now the revision number is 1. This means that it is going to send some information to the other side. If I go to switch access 2 and try to see the VTP status, it hasn't yet received anything, and there is a problem here. First of all, VTP is VLAN trunking protocol. This means that it should be a trunk. There should be a trunk between the two switches. If I don't have any trunk between switches, I cannot receive anything on the other side. Now let's see what is the problem with the trunk interface here. If I show interface trunk, it tells me that right now I don't have any trunk between switch 1 and switch 2. So if I show, let's say CDP neighbor, it tells me that switch access 1 is accessible through fast 111 and fast 110. So I need to configure trunk on this. Let's do a quick configuration. Interface fast 110 to 11. And I'm going to interface range, of course. Type interface range fast 110 to 11. I'm going to make sure that they are in switch port mode, that is in layer 2. Switch port trunk encapsulation is .1Q. This is the standard one. And of course on GNS3 this is the only option, but I'm just typing it for simplicity, and I'm going to show everything to you. And then switch port node X trunk. Now trunk is going to be enabled on these links. I'm going to copy these commands. I'm going to do the same thing on switch access 1. So if I go to interface range fast 110 to 11 and enable trunk on these interfaces, now I will have a working trunk between the two switches. Show interface trunk tells me that now I have a trunk and I am sending some information about trunk on the other side. Now if I go to switch access 2 and type do show interface trunk, it tells me that VLAN 100 and 101 are enabled on these interfaces. So how did switch access 2 know about VLAN 100 and 101? I hadn't configured anything on this switch. So if I try to show Vtp status, it tells me that it has received some packets from the other side. Now it knows about the domain name. It is of course a server. This means that I can make changes to this switch as well, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to change it in a minute. And of course you can see that the revision number is 1 here. VTP is 2. So this is how I can receive information from one switch and enable and apply all those information to myself. And I'm going to explain more about this in the next section.